Hey there friends, what's up? Kevin here from the MSOTD Rocks YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be reviewing the brand new album for a band that has been probably the most consistently high quality band in terms of music over the past 30 years. No, it ain't Rise Against, we did that last week. This is our review of Bodies by AFI. Before we get started though, please follow MSOTD Rocks on places like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You get to connect with us on all those different platforms. We post different song of the day features, any announcements, different IGTV videos every single Tuesday, live streams on Instagram every single Wednesday, and the Kevin's Crappy Food series every single Thursday where I play a recorder over a song and I do a horrible job because that's kind of the funny part about it. Remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel because we have these album reviews, the Kevin Figures Out series where I try to figure out certain bands I'm not that well versed in the scene or not, different top 10 lists, of course, year-end awards, and this is also where the Chord Progression podcast lives. It is our very own podcast where we're interviewing a lot of the emerging upcoming bands in the scene today for you getting to know it, and even some of the heavy hitters as well, and it's like you're getting to know them by sitting in a room with them, drinking a beer, shooting the shit with them. Why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? Watch those videos here on YouTube, or you can subscribe to Spotify, Podcasts, and iHeart. I'm going to have all the links in the description below for you guys so you can like, share, subscribe to all that stuff. And news! We have a sponsor for this video, so if you're like me, you're looking forward to live shows coming back, concerts coming back, going to these festivals and jumping in a mosh pit and going absolutely crazy, but you want to make sure your fitness level is in peak condition, especially for those festivals because, 3-4 days of that stuff, you want to make sure that you're good to go for 4 straight days. So you want to make sure your fitness level is at a certain point. During the pandemic, you might have slacked, so of course, get in the gym, get working out, but you want to make sure that you have different supplements and different products to help you recover better, build up some muscle, build up that endurance, and make sure that you're ready to go. And that's why we partner with Phoenix Fitness. They have an incredible range of products from different pre-workouts, different BCAA recovery, different proteins, different multivitamins, creatine, whatever you might need, they have it available for you to enhance your workout routine, enhance your fitness regimen, get your fitness goals to be achieved, and then when you jump in those mosh pits, you're going to be ready to go. You can find the link in the description below for Phoenix Fitness. Check out their products, and if you're going to check out some, please use the code MSOTD at checkout to get 15% off of your order. Thank you, Phoenix Fitness. Now let's go. Looking a little bit of a background, the band's last album was their self-titled album that came out back in 2017, and it was still received rather positively with an average score about 6.5 to 7 out of 10. With influence of a post-punk and more new wave sound, along with some influence from the band's different side projects, people did like the venturing into a different sound because of the high quality that AFI produces, but some people thought it was way too different from what they were used to with AFI, like what Pitchfork would say, but who listens to Pitchfork anyway, and really kind of stepped back. However, it was not able to garner the commercial success that their 2006 album, December Underground, was able to do. So that's pretty much like the peak for them, and they haven't reached that again yet, but every album is still pretty consistent with the high quality behind it. Now moving on to Bodies, which came out on June 11, 2021, and the band had announced the album was completed back in 2020, but of course because everything that happened with the pandemic, with COVID, the band ended up pushing the release date back into 2021, and they ended up releasing 5 singles off of this album from early January 2021 until the release date. Now, why did I call them one of the most consistent bands of the past 30 years, or even of all time? Because when you take a look at the discography behind AFI, they really have this like same core sound, but it's very loosely because they can go in so many different directions, but the quality of music is behind there, where every single album, it's even the ones that people don't consider to be as good as their top albums, are still high quality. They're always consistently delivering that 6 to 7 out of 10 ratio. And I look at bands that have consistently done something like this. I think of bands like Rise Against and Silverstein, where the music quality is still consistently good. There's some things that really peak on the great side, but I mean, you're never really find a bad album from those bands. So AFI might be the poster child for this because I'll even ask you this. Think of a band that sounds like AFI. You can't do it. Time to go into Bodies. So let's take a look at the concept construction and instrumentation of Bodies by AFI, and when it comes to trying to find a core sound by them, it's really hard to pinpoint, especially because over the past 30 years, their sound has just completely evolved so much, and they're so consistently good with venturing in different areas, experimenting with different sounds, that the quality of music is consistently there. Again, that's why I said they're one of the most consistent bands of the past 30 years. But when I took a look at Bodies, what I found was this more consistent construction with a punk rock bass, but with a lot of different alternative rock, alternative music, electronic, some 80s synth, really taking those influences and putting them in here as well. The runtime of these 11 songs only is about 36 minutes, so it does bring in more of that punk rock kind of feel in terms of the overall construction and the pacing with the overall limit of the time on the whole entire album. But we do get a much broader sense from AFI, a little bit of a lighter sense as well, so we're getting something that's kind of completely different that I really haven't heard many other bands, if any other bands, really venture into. So this is definitely something that's going to stand out on its own. But did it work? So what really worked on this album for me in composition, construction, instrumentation, it's the composition, the construction of these songs with more of that punk rock bass, because it kept the songs a little bit more energetic, fun flowing, very driving through, but even the lighter side of things really kept these songs a little bit different, a little bit more upbeat as well, a little bit more enjoyable to really listen to it a full run through, where you're not going to be mad that you're going to be listening to this thing. And you know me, I like the harder, heavier, more raw stuff, but there were things on this album that I really did like. Couple examples is working. Take a look at On Your Back, where the song, especially in the chorus, you take a look at the drumming, it has this rather consistent punk rock flow to it, but it has a lighter sound, especially when you get the guitars and electronic piano really layering over it to really get this more fun flowing, more consistent transitioning piece in the song, but it has this lighter punk rock feel that I feel is really palatable for a lot of fans. Take a look at Begging for Trouble as well, because in the chorus, the pace is kept up and the guitars come with more of that rougher tone that really fits in with more of this like 90s pop rock moniker, which is rather cool, but the mix is what stands out, because the mix is this drawn back feel to the volume, and it gives the song this lighter feel as well, while still having more of this dynamic sound throughout the whole entire thing. Take a look at Looking Tragic as well, because in the chorus, the drum pattern stays the same throughout the whole entire song, and the electronic guitar distortion stays rougher and fits well in with more like 2000s pop rock sense, but it does have more of this full feel to it. In like the 2000s pop rock sense with a slight influence of British punk to it, it really has this cool mix, because again, the focus on the tone of the 2000s part brings out a lighter sound, but the British punk, more construction core of it brings a little bit more of a roughness to it at the same time as well. It's a real good mix here. But what wasn't I the biggest fan about the construction on this album, and one of the things was the more oversaturation of the electronics on this one. When I took a look at it, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I felt like at times in some of these songs, the electronics were more prominent, and ended up taking away some of the more dynamics that the instrumentals could have had or were going to have if had the mix been different. It's just something where it just didn't really strike my ear right, where I'm like, this is just might be a little too much. Starting out, take a look at Death of the Party, because in the bridge, we get more of this like Dick Dale and his Deltones bass tone that really drives the song forward, and the drums come in well. And the lighter, higher electronic backing comes in for the second half to connect us back to the chorus, and I wasn't really the biggest fan of that, because I love the difference in that bass riff in the bridge. It created this different sound at Death of the Party, created this great building sound, but that saturation of the electronic backing in the second half of the bridge really kind of connected the song in a way, so I do understand that, but it really changed from that dynamic sound they were going to have originally in the first half. Back from the Flesh does have a very similar thing going on there in the bridge, because it focuses on a deeper synth that acts as the drum beat, and then we get some more strings over it as well to use more of this transitional piece. And I love the fact they use the strings, I love the fact they use more violins in there. It creates this more epic, grander feel, but that electronic synth that's over it sort of oversaturates the strings that are going over it, and man, those strings could have created this more dynamic, more just impactful, powerful, lighter feel to the whole entire bridge. But again, the electronic piece I felt just oversaturated and really brought the dynamics down a bit. And then Far Too Near, you take a look at the verse and the chorus, they're rather the same, except in the chorus, the guitars have a little bit more of a louder tone to them, but they have this distortion that really blends into the overall 80s pop rock sound that the song has, so it doesn't get like this over severely dynamic feel, it's rather consistent. And again, this is where this composition style of the electronic overlay in it kind of kept this rather consistent. But I do have to talk about one song, because this one's going to be very divisive in terms of fans. Just depends on what you like, honestly. And that song is Dulceria, because when you take a look at Dulceria, it definitely has this full-on Smashing Pumpkins vibe to it, kind of like 1979 sort of vibe. But it makes a lot of sense, because it was co-written with Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins. So it kind of sounds like Smashing Pumpkins featuring Davey Havok. And I don't really care that much for the Smashing Pumpkins tone personally. It's just not my cup of tea. So I totally understand that. However, if you listen to the song No Eyes, it definitely has more of this rock base to it with a lot of electronics backed away from it. So I took a look at it like, okay, we see a wash here. But overall, on the concept, construction, instrumentation of bodies, I love the fact they had this punk rock kind of construction in the bass, and they really add a lot more of these lighter influences to really create more of this fun flowing song and style that they have throughout this whole entire album. There were certain times where I thought the electronics really oversaturated things at points, but honestly, running through this album, if you put it on, I don't really think anyone's going to be mad that you put it on. It's got this fun sound to it that just kind of flows, kind of vibes, and I think that's what Body was really going for, so I think they achieved what they were going for. So now take a look at the vocals from Davey Havok, and I knew after the concept, construction, instrumentation that Davey's vocals were going to have this certain dynamic flow to them in terms of different pacings, different pitches, different distortions to really bring out what the instrumentals were trying to show, especially with more of that electronic alt synth overlay. Was this achieved? I'd say for the most part, yes. With the more consistent punk rock construction on this album in terms of the instrumental side, we got a little bit of a fast-paced, fun-feeling thing, so Davey's vocals were really going to have to change different pitches, different tones, different sounds to really match up here, and I thought he did a great job on this. One example is take a look at Dulceria, because in the chorus, following like the Billy Corgan sounding verses, Davey's vocals become more full, like in the pre-chorus of Love Like Winter, and I really dug the move here, because I'm a big fan of the December Underground album. It gives the song more of this amplified vibe of what it needs going to the whole hook of the song, but honestly, it's still a little bit too close to Smashing Pumpkins for my taste, but I do absolutely respect the move that they went with here. Escape from Los Angeles is another one I like because the more full tone from Davey had me reminded of the December Underground album, and of course, that's probably my favorite album from AFI, so I'm like, ooh yeah, I'm liking this tone, it's really reminiscent of it. That's because the way the song is constructed, I love the move back to that vocal set with the electronic backing instrumentals, but it does a great job with a little bit of British twang to it to kind of add a little more of that punk rock feel to it. I don't know why, it just worked. It really did work. Tied to a Tree, the last song on the album, was one that really had Davey's vocals being the most prominently best thing of that song. The reason I say is because in the chorus, it sounds like it starts out with more guys chanting, and then Davey taking over in a similar tone, the style in the verse, but with much louder volume mixed on them. And it was creepy because now you get the feeling that this demise is here and there's nothing you can do about it. It's a really scary good move by Davey Havok here to let his vocals and the chanting backing add to this feeling of demise that we all go through in the end called death. It really stuck out to me. Was there a time when Davey's vocals weren't the biggest thing in my mind? And it was on the initial song of the album, the first song on the runtime, Twisted Tongue. And it's just because his vocals were consistently melodic over a quicker backing. And while I'm a big fan of how he was able to pull that off, it was just throughout every single part, so it had this more consistent mesh through runtime. I really wasn't the biggest fan of that. But overall, when it comes to the vocals on Bodies by AFI from Davey Havok, we pretty much get what we expect from Davey Havok, and on almost every single song, he absolutely hits. His tone, his pacings, and how he's able to construct those vocals really bring out a lot more of the tones, especially with the electronic overlay, the alt instrumentation that really follows up with that punk rock bass. It just really creates this great overall sound. It's not perfect like we saw with Twisted Tongues, but for the most part, this was really well done. Now time for the themes of the album Bodies and how the style of the songs really played off on that. And when I was trying to look at the bass theme of Bodies, it was a little bit interesting to go in there because this is AFI. When it comes to trying to find the meanings, there's a lot of different things going on here, especially with Davey Havok. So I really wasn't sure what was going on. But I think if I boiled it down to anything, the bass would be the human experience of what we go through in life because, hey, we're all living these bodies, so we're all going to experience something like this, but not all the same. The element of taking a look at different topics such as themes revolving around love, finding someone that accepts you, and songs like Farts in Your Dulceria and Begging for Trouble. There's also different about different connections with people and how those connections might be broken over time in today's society, such as Twisted Tongues and On Your Back. Then there are things about being connected with yourself and realizing what your true self is and finding that true happiness within yourself. Songs like Escaping Los Angeles, Back from the Flesh, and Death of the Party really show this. But when it came to connecting the song styles with this, for me it was a little bit hard to try and figure this out because, you know me, I like the raw, heavier, rougher sound, and I'm easily able to connect those emotions with different emotions that I can really tie into with those meanings, so it's a little bit easier. With this album though, again, with that lighter synth overlay on a lot of these songs and that alternative inspiration that was on these, it was a little bit rough for me, not gonna lie, but when I looked at it, it was a fun album to listen to once again, but it did bring a lot of these songs to light and it brought more of this human experience to life as well. So I think this one is kind of more up to interpretation, especially with how AFI constructs their songs, but I actually did enjoy this, so I think this is kind of like up to interpretation depending on how you really feel about it, but again, this isn't something that's gonna really like completely be a miss, or for me completely be a hit. If it's gonna be anything, it's gonna be leaning towards, you know, this is good. Alright, time for my overall on Bodies by AFI, and it is... I'm gonna give Bodies a 6.5 out of 10. So 6.5 out of 10, what did I like about Bodies? And one of the major things I liked about it was the fact that these songs had this bass construction in punk rock, but with the electronic and more alternative influences on them, they really create more of this dynamic sound that really lets you get into it, whether you like punk rock like myself, or you like more of that alternative electronic stuff, or you like just rock in general. AFI does an incredible job to really bring out this more fun tone throughout all of their songs, to really enjoy listening to them and create this vibe. However, if you really dive deep in the meaning of them, you can really get lost in them and really feel the impact behind them. Songs like On Your Back, Begging for Trouble, and Looking Tragic really do bring this out the best in my opinion. So again, when it comes to that bass construction in punk rock style, but really changing it up to bring more of these alternative electronic and 80s synth vibes over it, really end up creating what honestly is a really interesting but fun listen through. So I like that fact about it a lot. But one thing I like about this album, and a lot of it is the oversaturation sometimes of that electronic and alternative style with that punk rock bass construction that, in my opinion, kind of mess with the overall flow of the songs and some of the most unique parts of them. Reason being is because the electronic overlay really overtook the power behind some of these. Take a look at Death of the Party, I should say, my bad. When it comes to that more like Dick Dale and his Deltones bass line, but then the electronic comes back in with the bridge, and it just really kind of messes up the impact that has. Take a look at Back from the Flesh again, with that more violin string backing. My God, this could have been a hugely powerful thing if they would have left it a little bit more alone, but they have the electronic overlay over it once again. It really just didn't feel fully fleshed out. And then Far Too Near had this way too consistent feel to it with that. So there are things that I like about this album, things I didn't like about this album, but you know what? It's still a fun listen through. Alright, now time for my final thought on Bodies by AFI. And when I said that AFI is one of the most consistent good bands over the past 30 years, I meant it, and this album really proves it with a 6.5 out of 10 rating. With that bass construction of the instrumentals in punk rock, and with different influence from alternative rock, more alternative music as well, electronic stuff, and with 80s synth, we got an album that is a little bit interesting, a little bit more sonic, but honestly has a rather fun feel to it at 11 songs in 36 minutes. If you put this album on a large crowd, everyone's going to be vibing to it in some way. Whether you're a rock fan like myself, or a more alternative fan, electronic fan, whatever it might be. It's highly consistent with that. I do think at times electronic does get oversaturated, which really kind of ruins the flow on some of these things. But when it comes down to it, I mean, this is a good, consistent album. It's a fun listen through. It's not that long, and honestly, AFI should hang their hats on this one. I mean, this is good stuff. I'm a fan of it. Alright, that's me for me today, guys. Thank you for watching this review of Bodies by AFI on the MCT Rocks YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe to this video. Subscribe to the channel, I should say. Like the video. Dislike the video if you don't like it. But put in the comments what you think about Bodies by AFI to make it this far. Thank you. My name is Kevin, and I'm with the hat flip. See ya!